manufacturers have an additional burden of proof today for payers and those who are evaluating the technologies, whether it's diagnostics or drugs. And consequently, that's shrinking the window they have, the revenue window they have in the patent life that they may have on a particular product. So are there effective ways where companies can speed up that process?
Industry is taking action to work with payers in a much, much earlier phase. So they want to understand, even as early as phase 1, what payers think about a particular intervention and how it would be implemented in the market later on. So I think there are novel partnerships, for example, that have been established between pharmaceutical industries and payer-like organization to get access to their information at an early stage during drug development to build better development strategies. So if you can look at the patient population, for example, if you can characterize the patient population better, as best as you can during the development, that's probably going to be helpful. And then later on, with novel mechanisms to collect data once the drug is actually on the market through registries or other mechanisms that fulfill that, I want to say, thirst of safety information, particularly on the regulatory side. Again, we see novel ways to do that. So I think overall, it's actually a really encouraging and pretty exciting development, because we're learning a lot of ancillary pieces that makes us a lot smarter and much better positioned to also then look at new drugs once they're ready to be marketed.
Is it a one-way street? Do payers really have the bulk of the valuable information? And is this really about data and making sense of it? Or is it really about exploration and rethinking the R&D process and the clinical trial process? Yep.
I think we're in that phase of finding out how valuable that really is. Having worked at a payer type organization and having been exposed to that type of data, there is a limitation. I mean, you can't answer all the questions with that type of data, and particularly if it's claims-based information, if you don't have chart information that is crucial, for example, during a drug development. So the granularity may not necessarily be there.
So we've talked a bit about these data sharing agreements that have been established, at least a handful of them in the past couple years. And there's also a lot of chatter about outcomes-based agreements to pay for a drug or the use of a diagnostic. What do you think the biggest barriers are to those really beginning to take hold?
Well, it's a new paradigm, and I think unless somebody's trying it and coming up with success stories, it's going to be questionable certainly how quickly, but how at all it will be implemented. If I can predict that this patient is not going to respond to a particular treatment, why would I pay for it? So if that technology exists, if that science keeps emerging the way we see it today, I think payers will increasingly ask these type of questions. And then pharma has to react to it with either a more sophisticated approach to really identifying those patients a priori, or creating reimbursement mechanisms that take that in account. So if you know that 30% won't react or not respond to a particular treatment, why would you pay for that? So the question then becomes very quickly, if we're treating everyone, are we just going to increase the price to make up for the ones that we may not get reimbursed for? Or are we going to create another mechanism that allows us to really be more specific? I don't believe the first approach is a very good one, certainly not for patients. I think the latter one is where we're heading.